All right, let's dive right into another explainer. Today we're unpacking the Libra archetype. We'll be fully decoding the seventh sign of the Zodiac, the famous scales of justice and beauty. It's a rich, absolutely foundational concept in Hellenistic astrology, and we've got a lot of ground to cover, so let's jump in.
So, I want to kick things off by posing a question directly to you. Out of the 12 signs in the entire Zodiac, why is Libra the absolute anomaly? Seriously, think about it for a second. We've got rams, bulls, twins, crabs, lions, but then we hit Libra. It is literally the only sign represented by an inanimate object, or sometimes a human figure holding that object. Why is that? What does this immediately tell us about the underlying energy of this sign?
Well, it turns out the scales are a symbol of really profound duality. You know, in ancient astrology, signs were often categorized as either human or bestial. Libra is distinctly a human sign. This means it represents our highest capacities for reason, logic, and rationality, completely separating it from pure primal instinct. Historically, these scales weren't just some abstract metaphor for justice. They were the literal scales of commerce used in the marketplace, as well as the scales of the courtroom. And here's the absolutely crucial point. You cannot weigh something unless you have at least two things to compare, right? The scale inherently requires an other. In this dynamic, Libra's ruling planet, Venus, acts as the fulcrum, the pivot point right in the middle, allowing a person to assess the complex relationship between different pieces of any given situation.
Okay, so when you actually break down the fundamental DNA of Libra, you find four overlapping Hellenistic ingredients. First off, its modality is masculine, or yang energy, meaning it's inherently active, radiant, and extroverted. Second, its quality is cardinal. That makes it an initiatory force. It absolutely loves to start things and build momentum. Third, its element is air, which is the realm of the social, the intellectual, and the communicative. And finally, it's the domicile, or the home base, of Venus. When you stack all of these together, you don't get some passive daydreamer. You get a highly active, highly social force that initiates momentum by sharing ideas and actively building relationships.
And it's actually pretty wild how this energetic combination perfectly mirrors the calendar itself. In the Northern Hemisphere, the entry into Libra exactly coincides with the autumn equinox. This is a massive cosmic shift. It's the literal point of departure from the first half of the astrological year, which, is highly focused on individual development, into a season where balance is paramount. It marks the precise moment when social and objective realities are suddenly weighed as, frankly, more important than the individual self.
To truly grasp this, it really helps to look at its mirror opposite. Think about Aries, the first sign of the Zodiac. Aries is the spark of life. It's fundamentally focused on the self and the individual journey. But look directly across the wheel to Libra, and the entire focus completely shifts to the other. If you have prominent planets in Libra, your personality is just naturally oriented outward. It results in a highly refined social aptitude. You essentially have this innate radar for how to navigate, connect, and adapt to almost any social setting, simply because your energy is fundamentally connective. Understanding how this outward focus actually behaves in practice brings us to the infamous Libran devil's advocate trait. Come on, we've all seen it. You state an opinion, and the Libra in the room immediately argues the exact opposite. But let's reframe this for a second. This isn't about being mean-spirited or argumentative just to get under your skin. The scales literally must find balance. If a room is leaning way too far to one side of an argument, the Libra will actively argue a point of view they don't even personally agree with, simply to ensure that all voices are aired. It stems from a deep intellectual desire for social inclusivity, coherence, and ultimate fairness. Now this brings us back to their ruling planet. Venus actually rules two signs in the Zodiac, and comparing them is incredibly revealing. It's fascinating to see how the exact same planet behaves so differently. On one hand, we have the Taurus expression of Venus. That's a night sign, deeply focused on the earth, material substance, sensory pleasure, really drawing things in. But consider the Libra Venus. This is Venus's daytime, masculine home. It's an air-based expression. It isn't worried about the literal bricks of the building. No, it's focused on the architecture, the design, the overall composition. It's an active energy, going out into the world to explore the market of ideas and using that signature Venusian charm and diplomacy to unify people. Which leads us to, honestly, one of the most fascinating paradoxes in all of Hellenistic astrology. Think about this. How exactly do the planet of beauty and unification, Venus, and the planet of cold, hard limits and boundaries, Saturn, manage to work perfectly together in this one single sign? Well, the answer lies in the concept of exaltation.
Saturn is exalted in Libra. It absolutely thrives here. Because if you think about it, a fair and just authority is the only kind that truly lasts. Saturn provides the rigid structure, while Libra provides the necessary fairness. Together, they just excel in the realm of contracts, law, social justice, and equality. For this mutually agreed-upon structure to actually work, the Sun, which represents the individual ego, is actually in its fall in Libra. The subjective ego has to take a back seat so the objective collective can thrive.
This cosmic push and pull perfectly explains that notorious Libran indecisiveness. I mean, when you combine the heavy analytical weight of Saturn with the constant balancing act of the scales, you get classic paralysis by analysis. They see both sides of the equation so clearly that making a firm choice actually feels like a betrayal to the other side. They desperately desire a win-win accommodation for everyone involved, and they carry a very genuine fear of rocking the boat. So what looks like flakiness or indecision from the outside is actually a highly complex internal weighing process trying to protect social harmony.
And when that complex internal processing gets applied to the physical world, we get what's known as the Libran eye. Thanks to their Venusian rulership, they possess this absolutely unparalleled eye for aesthetics. But again, it's not just about making things look pretty. It's highly mathematical. It's about mastering proportions, ratios, and symmetry. This is exactly why you see so many Libras excelling as architects, fashion designers, and interior decorators. And because it's an air sign, this aesthetic mastery easily bleeds into language too, creating incredible poets and writers who compose words with perfect intellectual harmony.
Ultimately, the whole shebang serves what I like to call the art of connection. Libra is fundamentally the sign of two-ness. In relationships, they are highly reactive. If you bring intense energy to the table, they will unconsciously adjust their side of the scale to balance you out. There's a compulsory social nature at play here. They literally need a sounding board. They don't even need you to agree with them. In fact, like we mentioned earlier, they might actually prefer if you don't, as long as there's an active, stimulating exchange of ideas happening.
Let's actually look at how this exact energy plays out in the real world through the charts of a few famous figures. Take T.S. Eliot, for example. He had Libra rising and a Venus-Mercury conjunction. He is a masterclass in using that Libran eye we just talked about for the precise aesthetic composition of language and poetry. Then there's Bill Clinton. With Jupiter, Venus, and Mars all in Libra, he possessed that legendary magnetic charisma. That's the ultimate manifestation of focusing entirely on the other in a conversation. Moving on to Leonardo DiCaprio, who carries a large Libra stellium. He represents that refined, aesthetic, human presence perfectly balanced in the collective eye. And finally, Venus Williams, a Libra rising who perfectly demonstrates the cardinal quality of this sign, that strategic, initiating, and highly competitive drive to win fairly on the court.
So all of this really brings us to our final takeaway for today's explainer. If you have prominent Libra placements, or even if you're just navigating Libra season, remember that your ultimate journey is mastering the art of relationship and reason. Because ultimately, justice and beauty really are two sides of the exact same coin, and a fair agreement is the only one that truly stands the test of time. The world desperately needs this energy to find equilibrium. So I'll leave you with this to ponder. In a world that so often rewards the loudest, most egotistical voices, how much more powerful is the quiet, undeniable strength of someone who actually listens, weighs, and perfectly balances the scales?